Hello, good evening.
Welcome to the LEC Update, the show you never thought you needed, and once you've seen it, you'll know for sure. I'm Evie de Portere.
And I'm Christy Frierson. The race for playoffs is on this weekend, and every game counts, except for Excel versus SK.
Well, our stats team has informed us that G2 are projected to finish first in 93.75% of all remaining scenarios. The other 6.25% are alternate timelines, where Team Liquid buys out the entire G2 roster.
Our research team did some investigating to help all the other LEC teams try to close the gap between them and G2. They sifted through all of G2's accounts, known, unknown. They even looked at what Promiscu was playing. They put together a list for us of all the picks to be aware of. Is that all of them? 143, 145? Yeah, that's all of them.
That's all of them, and that's a lot. Yeah, well, sometimes I ask, when has fandom gone too far? And I think I have found the answer. This fan in particular promised to build a shrine to G2 if they picked Garen. Now, don't get me wrong, worshipping your favorite team, even to this extent, is totally fine. But to openly encourage Jankos to pick Braum, that is just sick.
With the end of season award votes coming up, some players seem to have decided they don't want to be in the running for MVP anymore. Speaking of inting, Wunder looks like the worst player in the LEC to play Garen.
Misfits have also figured out their best way to win something this year. By flooding the pool for Rookie of the Split, they have maximized their chances for taking home the trophy. Now, I know last time on this show we gave Misfits a rough time for their big roster changes, so we figured, why not do it again? See, Misfits swapped yet another player late in the season, bringing in DOS the Boss as support. He was the third support to play this split, meaning Misfits almost have as many supports as they do wins. Now in NA, TSM copied Misfits' losing formula in the LCS quarterfinals and found similar success.
World seeding will be determined differently this year for the LEC. The team with the most championship points at the end of summer will not automatically become Europe's second seed. Instead, they will play a best-of-5 versus the winner of the regional qualifier to determine second and third. Now, many experts say this is the worst news Origin has heard all year. There may be worse news coming soon for Origin fans, though. Looking at their decline since the spring split finals, you have to wonder, when will they consider a roster change? And which role will Expeke be autofilled to this time?
Now, Fnatic's official account was briefly banned on Twitter last Tuesday. Sam Matthews said he received a message from Twitter informing him that the account was made by someone under the minimum age requirement of 13 years old. Now, many fans of other LEC teams see this as long overdue, considering the popular belief that all Fnatic fans are 12.
Last, and also least, Misfits and Excel. Both teams were officially locked out of playoffs last week, but don't feel too bad for them. After tomorrow, they'll have 10 new friends to enjoy their 5-month vacation with.
I hear Aruba's nice this time of year. For LEC Update, I'm Evie de Portere.
And I'm Christy Frierson. Aruba sounds great.
Yeah, I'd love to go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Welcome everyone to Berlin, Germany in week 9 of the LEC Summer Split. The race for playoffs is approaching its epic conclusion, and with 2 spots and a ticket to Athens up for grabs, there is still a lot left to be decided. I do think Grabs already has his ticket, but yet here we are. Hello everyone, I'm Sjokz, joined by Ender and Vedius. Did you miss me? Did you miss me?
So much.
Not miss that.
No.
Eloquent charm.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it wasn't a joke at all. Now, of course, I'm super happy to be back. Nonetheless, in week 9, where everything is left to be decided for playoffs and the race is heating up, incredibly so. And what is weird about it is that there's a lot of uncertainties still coming into week 9, maybe of teams we hadn't expected of.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out who's going to be second place, who's actually even going to make it into playoffs. And we have some pretty important games today, which will help, unfold that playoff picture.
Yeah, there is a lot of information, a lot of possible scenarios. So to set the stage for our last week, here's Medic with his playoffs checkup.
It's time for what could be the final checkup of the summer split. With 4 playoff spots locked and Misfits and Excel eliminated from playoff contention, we're down to a battle between Origin, Rogue, Vitality, and SK Gaming for those final 2 places in the knockout stages. Now, looking at today's schedule, Origin and Vitality hold their fate in their own hands. A win in our first game of the day would lock Vitality into playoffs. You might wonder, how can they lock when Rogue could still match Vitality's win-loss if they win their remaining 2 games? The reason for this is Vitality would lock due to our new tiebreaker rules. When 2 teams are tied on win-loss and head-to-head at the end of the season, we look at how many wins they got in the second half of the split. With a win today, Vitality would pick up 5 wins in the second half, and Rogue could only get up to 4, meaning that Vitality would be placed higher in any eventual tie. For Origin, all they have to do is beat Rogue. This would give them a 2-game cushion with only 1 game left to play for both teams, meaning that Rogue could never match them on win-loss. Now, at the top of the table, the battle for a guaranteed spot in Athens still rages on, with Fnatic and Splyce tied in second place. They play up against each other in our 3rd game of the day, and if Splyce win, they lock second. They have a 2-0 head-to-head over Fnatic. However, if Fnatic win, they'll need to hope that they win tomorrow versus Rogue, or that Splyce loses up against Misfits. With everything still up for grabs today, I, for one, know that we're in for one hell of a final week of the summer season.
I couldn't agree with you more, Medic, and thank you for laying out, I would say, many of the scenarios. Of course, there is so much that can happen, and you never know who's going to pick up that unexpected win and throw everything into disarray. Now, before we dive a bit more into the specific teams and their chances, let's state what we already know. Exile and Misfits, they are out. They have no way of making playoffs. G2, of course, is locked for Athens because they will be in the number 1 or 2 spot. Sjokz are also locked in playoffs, Fnatic and Splyce as well, but it is still up to be decided in what place they enter playoffs. Is that 1, 2, or 3? That does set the stage for a huge fight between Origin, Vitality, Rogue, and SK Gaming. Just when you hear that these 4 teams are the 4 teams that are vying for the last 2 spots in playoffs, that for me is a shocker when I think back to the beginning of the split.
Yeah, because, coming in, Origin was supposed to be the 2nd best team in the league, and to see them go on this fall has been a surprise. At the same time, Vitality started out looking just absolutely terrible, 0-4 to start off the split, and now they're also on the ride, converging now with Origin for 6th, 5th.
Yeah, and we want to focus in on Origin because it's been a big question mark as to their performance throughout the split. Regardless of who you ask, everyone has a different idea around what is wrong with this Origin squad. And it just goes to show the inconsistency that this roster faces from week to week. One time, it's nuke duck feeding. Sometimes the bot lane isn't stepping up. Sometimes they're not making the plays as a team. Every single week, it feels like a different issue, and it's difficult to pinpoint what Origin can fix as we move ever closer to playoffs.
Yeah, because it seems like this team is always looking for fights. It's a very big change for them. We used to praise them for being one of our more calculated teams, very intelligent team around choosing their fights. Now it seems like every single Drake that spawns, they go for a 50-50 fight, and that's where I think a lot of the inconsistency problems can come from.
That's why it's such a curious case and such a conundrum, seeing how OG came into the entire year with that long-term plan, had all the basics in place, and even said that they overplayed their own expectations in spring. So it's really kind of heartbreaking to see that that evolution is now stopping. But hey, no man overboard, of course. They can still make it in playoffs, and we know that they can look like a different beast in a best of 5.
Yeah, we certainly do, and that's very much the expectations that fall on their shoulders right now. Number 1, you should be able to beat the likes of Rogue and SK. Even though these teams have had surprising performances over the last few weeks, you're still considered the favorites, and the only hope is that in a best of 5, they are very good at learning, adapting, and evolving. And while they couldn't showcase that against G2, perhaps they can showcase a better performance against the likes of other teams.
Perhaps they can. A second team I want to talk about is over there in place 5 right now. Vitality, the story that we've been following for a long time, from the high highs at Worlds and their rookie breakout year last year too. Very bumpy road, I would say, so far in the LEC, and also in summer, just coming off an 0-2 week. What does that tell us?
Yeah, I mean, the 0-2 week was a big surprise, especially with their loss to SK, I believe, came just out of nowhere for this team that had been on a steady incline. They looked much better, fixing all these different problems that arose. They started working on Jack Troll and Attila very early in the season, then mid lane improved. The last few weeks, Mowgli has stepped into his own. So to see them take this step back off of really over-aggressive and strange-looking plays is sort of a confidence confidence, deflation for the squad.
Communication seems to be the main issue for me. We're going to talk a little bit more about it later, but the fact that this team last week looked like 5 solo queue players working together is a showcase of what I hope we don't see from Vitality coming into this week, and something they need to clean up if they want to lock that playoff spot.
Yes, and they can not only lock a playoff spot if they win today, then tomorrow they can also steal 4th from Sjokz. So as said, it's still all very real and no one is out yet. But when you look at those other teams like Rogue and SK, that's where it gets really tricky. Now, I do want to zero in on Rogue, a team that was last place in spring to contending for those playoffs. Do or die, but man, what a road they have behind them in summer.
Yeah, this Rogue squad coming into the split, I had very little expectations for. I thought that this was just going to be another bottom of the table team. They couldn't really stack up against anyone else, but they have surprised me. I feel like Inspired has showcased a lot for a very young jungler. I feel like this teamwork and coordination is very good. It's just more often than not, they drop the ball and they let games slip away from them. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that for their very first split as a rookie team that came straight from EU Masters, this roster showcased a lot.
Yeah, and I think the most exciting thing about this Rogue team is they have a very keen eye for seeing opportunities and then seizing them. This is not a scared squad of newer players that isn't willing to make that big play. As you saw in those clips there, Finn coming in on the flank, Inspired's aggressive early game pathing. This team really does seize the moment.
Yeah, for Rogue, it is still somewhat in their own hands. They're playing Origin today. SK Gaming, though, that was a playoff team in spring, and for them, it's not in their own hands anymore. Of course, they have to win every single game, but so much has to go right as well. So I'm just going to ask you guys, who's going to take these final 2 spots in the playoffs?
I feel that you have to go for the safe bet in Origin and Vitality. Just looking at the schedule and looking who they have going up against them, it makes it very easy to predict those 2. But I wouldn't be surprised if Rogue showcase something this weekend.
Yeah, I think SK making it in is pretty far-fetched in my eyes, but Rogue does control their own destiny to an extent. They play against Origin today. If they can take out Origin and then also win out tomorrow, they should be in.
So much to be played for, not just to lock in your playoff position, but also if you get that first round bye. So the stakes couldn't be higher for Splyce versus Fnatic later tonight. The top teams face off in our match of the week.
I don't think that this is just about battle for the bye, battle for second place. Those are the easy answers. It's about much more than pride. It's about momentum heading into playoffs in the most important time of the year.
Beating Fnatic is not only important because of the standings, it's important because Fnatic is always the team that knocks me out.
Splyce put up a good fight, they improved and impressed, but it's Fnatic that will have the last laugh. It is Fnatic that has earned the right to defend their title in Rotterdam.
Splyce are on this rise as the true dark horse in the LEC, that they can definitely disrupt this Fnatic versus G2 meteoric charge.
From losing in spring playoffs to Fnatic to fighting back once again, so many doubted them, but Splyce proved them amongst the best in the LEC.
I expect Fnatic to bring their A-game. They really want to get the revenge from the last time.
I still have some secret weapons against Vedius. The fact that I've been playing 3 years with him helped us win against them.
I think Hylissang is a very emotional player. I kind of regarded him as like this crazy genius that will either solo carry the game for you or solo lose it.
I think I would compare Bwipo and Chachi like a sword and a shield.
Bwipo as a player is extremely aggressive. He values lane pressure extremely high. That's probably his main weakness as well, that he's very exposable to ganks.
I think he's a stable player. He plays a good game, a consistent game. He knows what he's doing. But you can always tack on a few deaths onto that consistent game plan, and that's where I'm looking to attack him, of course. I want to grab that free gold.
That's the thing with Fnatic. They are quite predictable in their approach.
I don't think it's fair to say that we're one-dimensional because we take champions that we win with. Ultimately, if I get asked, do you want the Aatrox again, I will take it. If they're gifted to us, we should take them, and it's on us to show why you don't leave them open.
We know that these guys have incredible ceilings, that they can be those big moment star players.
Not even going to be contested. Vitality forcing their bake here because they're getting pushed back by this duo.
Anytime you face Fnatic, you're not just facing Reckless, Hilly, Bwipo, Nemesis, Broxa. You are facing the 6th man of the crowd. You are facing the 7th man of their legacy. And I know for Splyce, that can make your hand shake.
I feel like we always have a lot of pressure to perform, so maybe for them it's a very different situation because this time around they're actually like at the top, so it's a new setting for them. Meanwhile for us it's just another split, right?
Analytically, I think the only way to break this game down, it has to start with the mid lane. Everything's going to get funneled into Nemesis, which means Humanoid, it's show up or shut up time. So can Fnatic throw the punch, take him down, and if they get to late game, can they close against Splyce? I think Splyce will be able to absorb their pressure mid lane and should be able to show up in the late game when it counts.
We got so close to winning Worlds, so I will make everything in my powers to make sure I get there again.
This game is going to be really hype because both us and Fnatic are looking to get the second spot. It's going to be a bloodbath.
We win games out of nowhere. We win games we have no business winning. I think that's what makes Fnatic fun to watch.
It's gonna be the best game of the split.
Oh, Vedius bringing the attitude into this game, and there's so much at stake. The players were saying it there, not just beating your lane opponent, not just winning the match of the week, but that bye, that possible final in Europe, that possible Worlds ticket. It is incredible how this has all come to culminate into this matchup.
Oh yeah, it's going to be so important for both of these teams, starting with that second place spot to get you into a good position to take on, you know, G2, presumably in the semifinals.
Yeah. And the last time we saw this from Splyce was 2016. That was when Fnatic was going through a reformation, when Splyce's young roster was filing alongside G2 for those top spots. So for them to now finally be in this position again has to feel good for Splyce.
So good. So let's break it down analytically, rather, if I can pronounce it. Of course, when it comes down to the game, so much to look at. Frost was talking a lot about the mid lane and these two guys. Do you guys agree?
I mean, I think if we look at how this game unfolded last time these two teams met, yes, it was the mid lane, you know, there was the Kiana pick from Humanoid, that was huge. But for Splyce in particular, it was about shutting down Hylissang on his signature Rakan. I think he finished that game 1-8. It was one of the huge underperformances of Hylissang so far this split, and it's been something that has happened a lot for this player, especially in recent weeks. I think that if Splyce can get the hard CC to lock him down and attack him, he could have another really weak game.
And it was this game where a lot of my criticisms towards Fnatic actually started, because compared to what they were doing before this was a very uncharacteristic game. Seeing both Broxah and Hylissang not have the games that they normally do, we've only seen like a repeat of a lot of these performances so far in the second half of the split, which is why coming into this game, based on their most recent performances, your eyes kind of have to go towards Splyce as being potential favorites.
So is that also the case? Who do you guys have to?
Well, for me, I'm still sticking with Fnatic. Even though on paper it looks like, even though it looks like the Splyce have made a lot of improvements, I actually still have a lot of faith in Fnatic's mid game. I feel like in recent weeks, they've showcased that while their early game has faltered at times, the moment they get to the 20-minute mark, they can work well as a team, they pressure well on side lanes, and I feel like it's something they can look to take advantage of from the side of Splyce.
But that's the thing, right, is that Fnatic, yeah, their mid game can be good, but when this team was performing so well in the first half split, it was all about the early game. It has not looked that good recently, and it's been Splyce that have really been stepping things up. I think especially Xerxes and Humanoid finding collapses on side lanes has been super, super key for this team. So I think if you shut down Fnatic's early game, they're not going to look nearly as good.
Well, fantastic stuff. It's our third game of the day, but we're already properly hyped for it. And I think in general, the split has also been really hype. And as we're closing out the regular season this week, so far, we want to look back on how fun it's all been and how entertaining from an analyst perspective, but also just from on your couch at home, I can imagine. Bloody games, fast games, a lot of action in Europe.
Yes, as you can see that this is comparing stats from different splits here in Europe. And right now we sit at the first for the vast majority of them. Kills and deaths at 15, CKPM, average game time is incredibly low. The only thing we're behind in solo kills right now. So it looks like you guys are going to have to pick the pace up for the final week.
I want some 1v1 fights is what I want to see out of these guys.
Yeah, why is that actually that everything has gone so fast? Of course, the meta coming into it, coming out of MSI was pretty fast, but almost all teams, I say almost, you know who I mean, has been doing that and has also been picking all kinds of wacky things in the draft phase.
Well, a part of it is because of these crazy picks. You talk so much about it, Sjokz. It was something we saw a lot at MSI as well, the power of flex picks and how they can be utilized. And we're still continuing to see this creativity come out from Europe with the likes of Rengar in the top lane. Debatable how successful that was alongside the Annie top lane. We've seen some Kiana as well. And it feels like that overall, we've seen a lot of innovation and uniqueness that has helped and contribute to a lot of the chaos that we see here in Europe.
It's been so fun. And do we think that's going to continue? I know, of course, we've been, you know, a bit meh about the Zero and the Corki mid lane, but there's some nerfs are coming. I've heard.
Yeah, 916 is going to be a whole new animal.
So what can we then expect for the play? Whoa.
What's happening?
Hello?
Oh,
What?
Is this thing on? Look, your stats
Honestly?
are
Why does he have power
but
here?
seriously,
Yeah.
I have some quick stats to blow your mind. And this special edition of Quick Stats is brought to you by EU Done Quick, the G2 edition. You may have heard of speedrunning in video games, but did you know that if you are a good enough team or an MSI champion, you can speedrun an entire summer split? Well, I'm going to prove it to you right now by starting with game time. The average game time for G2 Esports this split alone is over 3 minutes quicker than the previous record of Fnatic at 29.80. That is an insane difference. Do you know what I can do in 3.2 minutes? I could cook an egg. But it's not the only thing. Game times are very important, but let's also take a look at the average kills per team at the 15-minute mark. G2 Esports, on average, nearly kill 7 people. But the difference between first and second is over 1.5 persons more per game. So they're not only winning quickly, they're doing it in style. Now, G2 isn't first in absolutely everything. In fact, they're not even in medal contention yet for damage per minute. But they do have the ability to jump. G2 Esports in summer 2019 is just behind H2K and G2 with 2 games left to play, meaning they could also set the record there. Now, it wouldn't be a quick stats segment without looking at some dragons, and frankly, G2, while speed running a game, you do need to skip some mini bosses and objectives. And what that means is they are currently not controlling the most amount of dragons. They have conceded less than 1 per game, which is good, but not as good as some of the rest of the table. As a quick aside, this team has not picked up any Elder Drakes, and they currently have secured 10 Ocean Drakes, more than any other team in the summer split. G2 Esports may have speedrun the summer split to date. They are continuing to break records, and they might just make this the best split and best year for any European team ever. And that is impressive.
Whoa, you know what? I actually found this one interesting.
Don't give him that.
Come
Wow.
on.
I mean, the funniest thing was Unicorns of Love being in there for fastest game time because they just were really bad.
No need to kick him when they're down. They're not around.
To be fair, he is right in that G2 right now are paving the way for Europe. If they are able to win this split and potentially go on to win Worlds, they could set a be the first to pass the golden road.
Don't mention it, Vedius. I'm nervous already. Let's take a look at the schedule and know that the teams will also be very nervous today, especially those still in playoff contention. Rogue OG is just where my eyes go immediately because of how weighty that is for playoffs. And, you know, Rogue just has it all in their own hands. And Origin as well.
I feel like based on how Rogue have been playing, especially last week, there's a real potential for them to upset Origin. And while I still have predicted Origin, while I feel that is the safer bet, don't be surprised if Rogue just come out of nowhere and get a big upset win against Origin like they did before.
I like how you're hedging your bets because the prediction game is just not going well for you here.
Yeah, the race for superior analyst, I'm glad you mentioned it. Vedius is in dire need of a playoff buff. We know it exists, but where are you? So Vedius, 48 points.
Listen,
Tied with
I'm competing with StatSpot right
Even
now.
the host
okay?
is beating you, slamming you.
Wait till playoffs, it'll turn it around, I promise.
Yeah, like in previous years, I know. Well, of course, for you guys and girls at home in the fan vote, 52 points, and you can still win because, of course, the prediction game will continue throughout the playoffs. You get points for predicting both the outcome and also what the scoreline will be, so, you know, you can catch up as well. Ender, do you think you have it in you for the victory?
Oh, I mean, I definitely have it in me. I think Medic's going to troll a little bit when it comes to playoffs. I'll slide in there with some good, honest predictions and take home the trophy.
Today I'm going to close the gap by 2 points.
I love
so
how the
you better
fan
be
vote
ready.
and me both have Rogue for the upset. Nothing against OG, but I don't know. I like the underdog story.
Yeah,
I mean,
like people
so does
believe.
Vedius, apparently.
I said it's a possibility.
All right, moving on. It's not about us, you know, just a little, but it's mainly about the teams and who's going to get to playoffs, and it's make or break, especially for Vitality. They're going to kick off the action today versus Misfits. Now, even though we've been a bit down on Vitality, 1 win this weekend would lock them in playoffs, and they can also still challenge for 4th place. But I think what Vitality is also struggling with is the fact that, you know, they started so well in their first year. So we were looking so closely at them and their evolution with the new jungler Mowgli at the beginning of the year. I think the jury's out on how successful that all has been.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think that last split was a big disappointment for them. At the beginning of the year, Yamato said that he was going to win the LEC, and that was part of his goal. And right now, the team doesn't look like they're on track to do that, especially when we only look at their last week's biggest issues. They went 0-2. And I feel a big part of it was because of their communication style. It felt like that they wanted to set up for a lot of plays. And we can see in this replay now, Vitality's trying to set up a play in the mid lane. What happens? Jector tries to force a fight in the river. Attila is then there to support him. They get caught out. They get punished. The same thing happens around a Drake fight. Jizuke is setting up a flank. What happens? An Engage tries to get forced while the team is disjointed. And this is why earlier I mentioned it feels like I'm watching solo queue players sometimes, because it feels like they're all on different pages. They all have different ideas about what they want to do and how to play the game. And ultimately against the good teams in the league, they get punished.
Yeah, and something that doesn't help this team necessarily when it comes to like unifying under one vision of how to play out the game is I feel like they draft themselves like very narrow win conditions, you know, in a game like that where they're really lacking, I think, hard engage, relying on maybe Silas ults to get it started or a Volibear running down your target. If you don't give yourself the ability to like play through multiple lanes or set up fights easily, you're going to have different people getting impatient, especially on a team like Vitality, and jumping the gun before the rest of your members are ready.
Yeah, they need to get on the same page, win this game versus Misfits, and they are in playoffs. So how will they stylistically match up versus this Misfits?
Well, I feel that Misfits are actually in a pretty good position going up against Vitality, largely because they love to play through their mid lane, whereas Vitality is the complete opposite. Mowgli does not go anywhere near Jizuke in the early game, whereas Leader is all about getting that jungle attention, playing those assassins, trying to snowball his lane, and this could be a great avenue of attack for Misfits if they want to find this big win today.
Yeah, I also think that with Misfits bringing Hiva back in to support alongside Han Sama, they're going to be leveling up their bottom lane as well. I don't think DOS looked terrible, but it wasn't, you know, the same level of performance that I think we've been seeing out of Hiva. So this whole Misfits roster should be looking better coming into week 9.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not going to write them off. Of course, they've picked up a couple of wins with this new roster as the split went on, and it would be great to see that for them. But on the other hand, what you really want to see if you're on the sidelines, and also as an analyst, I can imagine, is a Vitality that gets back to those strengths.
Yes.
Do you think that will be possible with what we've seen? Do you think they have best of 5 adaptation if they do make it to playoffs to get to high highs? Or what's the verdict?
I mean, I think best of 5 is going to be very difficult for them, you know, when we're looking at the other competition that they could be facing. But ultimately, I do expect this team to bounce back from last week. I think you can pinpoint, especially in their SK game, a few like very clear mistakes from where it just snowballed against them that if they can shore up, should look much stronger and secure themselves a playoff spot.
I feel like that if I can just see more teamwork within this team, and I feel like they're actually talking with each other and working towards the same goal, then I have a lot more confidence in this Vitality roster because they have all the pieces. Everything is there to be a successful team, and we've seen them succeed before. They just need that one unifying thing to bring it all together, and then they could be a big team that challenges in playoffs.
Absolutely huge matchup, and with that, it is almost time to kick off the final week of the regular season. But first, let's check out the new episode of EU Rising featuring Misfits.
I think the most interesting thing about Misfits is the fact that they're actually an entire team of rookies. They are coming into every game with absolutely zero expectations.
At the moment, experience is the only thing that's keeping some players in the league. But the game is changing. You can see G2 playing, and G2 is probably the perfect example of how individual skill is becoming more and more important in League of Legends at the moment. Individual skill is obviously higher on champions that you're comfortable on. So if I'm playing Jax, I know that I can get better than any top laner.
And maybe Dandan can do it. Look at Neon, he's going to take no profit. Q is dead, but Dandan's in there, and the Baron's low, and Dandan gets in, and Misfits have somehow found the fight.
Absolutely unreal. Wulai now trying to turn around, but there goes Dandan.
It's the same with Leader on Akali, on Zed, on any of his comfort champions.
Doing stuff on the fly all the time, like reacting. We don't really think too much about the game. We're like, okay, how do we win? Oh, something has happened. We need to take care of this first, and then it just keeps going and going and going.
For every player ever, the first year in LEC is just to prove to everyone that you're worth it. For us, it's just to prove to Misfits and to the fans and to the other players, of course, that we're not to be underestimated, that we can actually earn our keep.
Well, this week is the last